Unlock the 1%'s communication secrets. What they don't say. I spent 5 years studying how the ultra-wealthy communicate. And what I discovered will shock you. It's not what they say that makes them billions. It's what they don't say. Today, I'm going to expose the hidden communication tactics that separate the 1% from everyone else. These aren't motivational platitudes. These are psychological weapons that have been scientifically proven to influence, persuade, and command respect. And here's the most shocking part. 93% of communication effectiveness has nothing to do with your words. The ultra-wealthy have mastered this silent language. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how they do it. If you're ready to communicate like someone worth millions, hit that subscribe button because we're about to unlock secrets that most people will never discover. The silence weapon. Secret number 1 is the most counterintuitive, the power of strategic silence. While average people fill every second with words, fearing awkward pauses, the ultra-wealthy use silence as their secret weapon. Warren Buffett doesn't do cold calling or hostile takeovers. He waits for his phone to ring. Here's the psychology. When you speak immediately, your brain releases dopamine from the act of talking. But when you pause strategically, the other person's brain starts working overtime, filling that silence with assumptions about your confidence and authority. Watch any billionaire being interviewed. They pause for 3 to 5 seconds before answering difficult questions. This isn't hesitation, it's calculated. That pause communicates 3 things. 1. I'm not reactive. 2. My words have weight. 3. I control this conversation. The shocking truth, instead of relying on logic. The world's greatest leaders use 2.9 times more appeals to emotion and 3.4 times more appeals to intuition. But they deliver these appeals wrapped in strategic silence that makes every word hit harder. Try this today. Pause for 3 seconds before answering any important question. Watch how people suddenly lean in, hanging on your next word. The authority illusion. Secret number 2 will disturb you. The authority illusion. The wealthy don't just communicate authority. They manufacture it through invisible psychological triggers that most people never notice. Our body language, those silent messages delivered through movements and gestures, often speak louder than the most eloquent speeches. For an executive, understanding and mastering the art of body language is paramount to effective leadership. Here's what they do that others don't. The height hack. They always position themselves to appear taller in photographs and meetings. Not through platform shoes, but through strategic positioning. They sit in higher chairs, stand while others sit, or position themselves on slight elevations. The gesture hierarchy. Their hand gestures never go above their chest level unless making a point. Nervous people gesture wildly. Authority figures keep their movements controlled and deliberate. The gaze, control. They maintain eye contact 70% of the time while speaking, but only 40% while listening. This creates a psychological power dynamic where others feel compelled to earn their attention. The shocking part: these aren't natural behaviors. They're learned techniques that create an illusion of inherent authority. anyone can master them. The scarcity trap. Secret number 3 is psychologically manipulative. The scarcity trap. The ultra-wealthy never appear available, even when they are. This isn't about being rude. It's about leveraging one of the most powerful psychological principles. Scarcity increases perceived value. Here's their playbook. The availability paradox. They schedule meetings weeks in advance, even for 15-minute conversations. This isn't because they're busy. It's because scarcity creates urgency and importance. The response delay. They never respond to emails immediately, even when they're online. Strategic delays of 4 to 6 hours create the impression of high demand and careful consideration. The access control. They create artificial barriers to their time and attention. I only take 3 meetings per month, or I only work with 5 clients per year. These aren't capacity limits. They're value creation mechanisms. The psychology is brutal but effective. When something appears rare or hard to get, our brains assign it higher value automatically. Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion are reciprocity, scarcity, authority, commitment, and consistency. Liking and consensus. Start implementing this immediately. Stop being immediately available. Create intentional friction between your time and other people's requests. Watch your perceived value skyrocket. The emotional bypass. Secret number 4. Bypasses rational thinking entirely. The emotional bypass. While most people try to convince through logic, the wealthy target emotions directly. They've discovered that people make decisions emotionally and then justify them logically. Here's their secret formula. Story, not statistics. Instead of presenting data, they tell stories that create emotional experiences. A billionaire doesn't say our ROI is 15%. They say last month we helped a single mother buy her first home. Mirror, don't match. They subtly mirror the emotional state of their audience, but never match it exactly. If someone is excited, they show controlled enthusiasm. Someone is concerned, they show thoughtful consideration. Strategic vulnerability. They share personal failures and mistakes, but always within a triumph narrative. This creates relatability while maintaining superiority. I failed 3 times before building my first $1 million company. The shocking neuroscience. Persuasion consists of 4 essential elements. Establishing credibility. Framing to find common ground, providing vivid evidence, and connecting emotionally. But they reverse engineer this. They start with emotion and work backward to logic. This is why Elon Musk talks about saving humanity instead of electric car sales. It's why Steve Jobs talked about thinking different instead of computer specifications. The commitment trap. Secret number 5 is ethically questionable. The commitment trap. The wealthy don't just get agreements. They engineer psychological commitments that are nearly impossible to break. Here's their manipulation playbook. The foot in the door sequence. They never ask for what they really want initially. They start with tiny requests that seem reasonable, then gradually escalate. Could you just look at this proposal? Becomes, since you reviewed it, what's stopping you from moving forward? Public commitment amplification. They get you to commit publicly whenever possible. Why don't you announce your decision to the team? Now you're not just committed to them, you're committed to your public image. The documentation effect. They get everything in writing, no matter how small. A handshake agreement becomes an email summary, becomes a signed document. Each step increases psychological commitment. The psychology is devastating. Once people commit to something, especially publicly, they'll go to extreme lengths to remain consistent with that commitment, even when it's no longer in their best interest. This is how multi-billion-dollar deals get made, not through single negotiations, but through carefully orchestrated commitment sequences that make saying no psychologically painful. The reciprocity weapon. Secret number 6 creates psychological debt. The reciprocity weapon. The ultra-wealthy don't give gifts, they create obligations. Every favor, every gesture, every generosity is strategically designed to create reciprocal pressure. Here's their tactical approach. Disproportionate value. They give something that costs them little, but has high perceived value to the recipient. A billionaire's private jet ride costs them nothing extra, but feels like a $50,000 favor to you. Strategic timing. They don't give randomly. They give right before asking for something, creating immediate reciprocal pressure. Here's a $10,000 speaking fee. By the way, I'm looking for new investors. Hyper-personalization. Their gifts aren't expensive. They're impossibly thoughtful. They remember details from conversations months ago and reference them in meaningful ways. The shocking psychology. Humans have a deep psychological need to balance social debts. We like people who are similar to us. We like people who pay us compliments, and we like people who cooperate with us towards mutual goals. But the wealthy weaponize this by creating debts that can never be fully repaid. Warren Buffett doesn't just invest in companies. He sends handwritten letters to CEOs' grandchildren. That personal touch creates loyalty worth billions in business relationships. The status positioning. Secret number 7 controls social dynamics. Status positioning. The wealthy don't compete for status. They define it. They create the game, set the rules, and position themselves as the ultimate authority. Here's their status engineering. Physical positioning. They control physical space strategically. They sit at the head of tables, position themselves with their backs to walls, and ensure they're never looking up at others during conversations. Conversational control. They don't dominate conversations, they direct them. They ask questions that position others as subordinates seeking their wisdom. What would you do in my position? Instead of what should I do? Reference group engineering. They carefully curate who they're seen with publicly. Every photo, every event, every association is designed to elevate their perceived status by proximity. Information asymmetry. They position themselves as having access to information others don't. They might say, I was just talking to famous person, or the data I'm seeing suggests. This creates a knowledge hierarchy where they're at the top. The devastating truth. They don't need to be the smartest or most accomplished in the room. They just need to be perceived as such. And perception becomes reality when everyone treats you as the authority. The influence multiplier. The final secret is the most powerful. The influence multiplier. The ultra-wealthy don't just influence individuals. They create influence systems that work for them, even when they're not in the room. Here's their systematic approach. Influence mapping. They identify key influencers in every important network and systematically win them over. Not through manipulation, but through strategic relationship building. Information brokerage. They position themselves at the center of information flows. They know who needs what information and become the valuable connector, creating dependency relationships. Reputation architecture. They don't defend their reputation. They architect it. They have networks of people who speak positively about them without being asked, creating organic social proof. Legacy positioning. Everything they do is designed to create lasting influence that compounds over time. Their ideas, their methods, their connections all work to expand their influence exponentially. The final shock. They've discovered that true wealth isn't just about money. It's about influence that generates money automatically, relationships that create opportunities effortlessly, and systems that work for them while they sleep. Here's what I need you to understand. These secrets work. They're psychologically powerful, scientifically proven, and ethically complicated. The ultra-wealthy use these techniques because they're effective, not because they're right. Some border on manipulation. Others are just sophisticated communication skills. My challenge to you: use these insights to communicate more effectively, build better relationships, and create more influence. But never forget the difference between persuasion and manipulation, between influence and exploitation. If this opened your eyes to how the game is really played, smash that like button. Subscribe for more uncomfortable truths about success, and drop a comment. Which of these secrets shocked you most? Next week, we're exposing the psychological tricks companies use to make you buy things you don't need. You'll never look at marketing the same way again. Remember, knowledge is power, but how you use that power defines who you are.